Welcome everyone to the remote meeting of the Statutory Licence Subcommittee taking place on Wednesday the 9th of December 2020, which is being recorded live to the Council's website and will be available to be viewed for a minimum of 6 months. I am Councillor Pauline Craythorne and I will be chairing the meeting today. I am joined by Councillors Jan Blakely, Councillor David Brown, Councillor Liz Brown and Councillor Liddell. If I lose my connection, it will be taken over by Councillor Jan Blakely until it is restored. Before I commence with the formal business on the agenda, I would like to cover some housekeeping issues for us all to follow. Please keep your microphones on mute. To speak, please use the right-hand side function and type RTS, request to speak. Remember, everyone in the meeting can see the messages in the chat function. When invited to speak to me, please remember to unmute your microphone. Once invited to speak, please introduce yourself with your name and position, unless you have already done so previously. If you are having issues with your connectivity, try switching off your video and use just the telephone function. If connectivity issues continue, you may have to leave the meeting and rejoin to get a better signal. Moving on to the agenda. Item 1, apologies. Do we have any apologies for absence, Jill?
No, Chair, no apologies for absence.
Item 2, substitutes. Do we have any substitute members, please, Jill?
No substitute members, Chair.
Thank you. Do any members have any declaration of interest? Item 4 is an application to vary the premises licence to specify an individual as a designated premises supervisor for the new Westley Lyceum. I would like to welcome all parties to the hearing, who are the applicant Carol Madeley, Sergeant Caroline Dixon of Durham Constabulary. We are also joined by licensing team member Helen Johnson, committee service members Jill Errington and Kirsty Charlton, and the legal advisor of the subcommittee, Catherine Hazel. Please note that all 5 members will sit during the hearing today, but only 3 will make the decision. I will now ask Catherine to explain why we do this and to run through the procedure. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So this is a statutory licensing hearing in accordance with the Licensing Act 2003, which means only 3 members are entitled to make the decision today. However, during any hearing, there's always the risk that conflicts of interest can arise, or a member takes ill or loses connection to the hearing, forcing them to retire. If this was to happen, it would mean today's hearing would be inquirate and a new hearing would have to be arranged. Therefore, to ensure that this does not occur, additional members are asked to participate so that they can stand in for any member that has to retire. With regard to the procedure for today's hearing, we will hear from Mrs. Johnson, the licensing team leader, regarding the application. And Mrs. Johnson will outline her report, and every party is then given the opportunity to ask her questions and will be invited to do so by the chair. We'll then hear from the police officer, Sergeant Dickinson, and then each party is given the opportunity to ask her questions. And then finally we hear from the applicant, and each party is then given the opportunity to ask questions of her. Once representations have been made and all questions have been asked, the parties are then invited to sum up, and the order will be the licensing officer, the police officer, and then the applicant. After this, the subcommittee will then retire to deliberate in private, and all parties are notified of the decision later on today. Once notification has been made, a more formal written notification is sent after the hearing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Catherine. Could we now move on to the licensing office report? Helen Johnson, could you give us your report, please, Helen?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. So, as explained, this is an application to consider and determine Mrs. Carol Madeley to be the designated premises supervisor. The application, you'll see, attaches Appendix 3, pages 11 to 14 are attached to the report, and that's in regards to the new Westley 5 West Grove Seaham for the premises. A plan showing the location of the premises is attached as Appendix 2, which is at page 9. Under the Licensing Act, it's a mandatory condition where there's a supply of alcohol is the licensable activity that there has to be a designated premises supervisor, and the guidance states that the designated premises supervisor should normally be an individual who is in day-to-day control of the premises, and that's to provide a single point of accountability within the premises should any problems arise. Just going through some background information in regard to this particular premise and the application. So Miss Madeley's the licence holder and also the DPS, and she has been since the 12th of August 2015. Miss Madeley notified the licensing authority to remove herself as the DPS on the 17th of September this year, as she was experiencing problems with another person involved with the running of the premises. We actioned that accordingly, and the request was where she was removed immediately. But then on the 22nd of September, we received an application from Miss Madeley, as she is the premises licence holder, to reinstate herself as the designated premises supervisor. There was an objection received because there's a 14-day consultation period with the police in regards to this type of application, and the police objected to that particular application, and so it came to a subcommittee on the 27th of October where it was rejected. We've had confirmation that an appeal has been submitted to the Magistrates Court in regards to that decision, so that's ongoing at the moment. And then, because there's no provision in the Act which would stop a further application, in the meantime, Miss Madeley put herself forward again in an application to name herself as a designated premises supervisor, and it can take immediate effect. So this is where we are today. That was received on the 28th of October, as explained, as attached to Appendix 3. And as part of that consultation period with the police, we did receive an objection from the police, Sergeant Caroline Dickinson, on the 9th of November. That's attached as Appendix 4 at page 16. There's also, Chair, been some additional information submitted by Miss Madeley, and there are 3 emails in support, and they've been circulated as additional information, so you should have had sight of those, and also the police have been given those as well. So recommendations: you need to determine the application with a view to promoting the licensing objectives, and you're recommended to give appropriate weight to the steps that are appropriate to promote the licensing objectives, the representations, including any supporting information that's been presented by all parties, Durham County Council statement of licensing policy, which the relevant parts are attached as Appendix 5. You'll also see Section 182, the relevant sections at Appendix 6, and also the legislation in regards to this type of particular application, which is attached as Appendix 7. The options available to members are either to grant the application or to reject the application. Just one other further point, Chair. There has been a request by Miss Madeley, because of some certain circumstances where she may discuss matters that are personal. She has requested that the hearing goes into private under Regulation 14 of the hearing regulations. So I would just like to make that request on behalf of Miss Madeley, if members were to consider that. Thank you, Chair, and I'll take any questions.
Right, thank you, Helen. Before we ask you any questions, can I ask the legal officer to advise us on this, please?
Yes, Chair. So as Helen's just said, in accordance with Regulation 14 of the Licensing Licensing Act 2003 hearings regulations 2005, and that indicates that hearings should take place in public. However, under regulation 14.2, the licensing authority may exclude the public from all or part of a hearing where it considers that the public interest in so doing outweighs the public interest in the hearing taking place in public. So from the brief indication given to you today and in the papers, it appears that the information to be discussed is information relating to an individual, and as such this information is exempt in accordance with paragraphs 1 of the Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, and the information would be exempt from public hearing and would be in private. And it's a matter for the subcommittee to determine whether it's in the public interest to exclude the public from the hearing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Could I ask all members if they would agree that the meeting is held in private from now on?
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you. We do not have any other business, so we will now continue the meeting in private. If you wish to find out the decision, please email licensing@durham.gov.uk. The address can be found on the website and the papers for this meeting. Thank you very much for attending.